Hello, my friends. And today on Data Day, we have a really great show. We're going to talk about what the industry is doing. We're going to talk about Road Check Week. Amazing things happening. Even today, rates are still going all over the place. Today on the Logistics Life. Dean, my man, I tell you, it's been a whirlwind. Road Check Week last week. We saw prices doing things. Well, I shouldn't say that we never thought they'd do because that was the next thing that was coming out of my mouth. But I think we expected it, right? Right? Like we talked about this last week, or actually the week before last, about Road Check Week and kind of this year was ghost drivers. So I'd love some feedback from you on it, what the data tells us, and then we've got an interesting topic that we're going to get into, and that is the abnormality, or is it the new normality
You know
of
melody.
the industry?
Yeah.
Ooh, I think I just came up with a new one there,
You,
buddy.
yeah, this is fantastic discussion because I was reflecting on my 5 years at DAT, which has gone super fast after 4 years at FreightWaves. Like it's sort of 9 years in freight market analytics after
And we
decade.
just realized Dean and I met in 2018, and we didn't realize how long we've been friends. It's kind of like, is it the same with you where it's almost like the years of the pandemic is a blur, where it's, you know, and my wife and I and friends, we often talk about this where we try and come up with these timelines. Oh, that was like 3 years ago. And they're like, no, man, 3 years ago was like in the heat of the pandemic. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So it was actually 5 years ago. And then your back starts hurting because you realize how old you're getting.
Well, you know, yeah, 5 years since I've been at DAT and a lot longer in freight market analytics, and I reflected on that period on the way back from Phoenix last night, and I was just thinking, I kind of started in the freight market side because prior to that I was in telematics on the other side of the ledger, which is all about cost reduction. Freight market analytics is all about the top side of the P&L, right? The revenue side, and a little bit about margin. And I thought this has been a wild ride. Like, because
Mm,
if you go back and look at all of the freight recessions back to the turn of the century and think about the impact of 9/11, and then you work your way through the Great Recession and all those areas, like they were fairly. Great Recession was like a fairly big deal. We lost 25% of our capacity, demand crash. So that was a big deal, but not nearly as big a deal as what the pandemic was, because we had like freight demand just crash and markets shut down. It was like not a lot of seasonality. Well, the one thing you can count on now is road check week, like in terms of
yeah.
what carriers do. Uh,
Hmm.
but the rest of it is kind of, and from someone that's trying to describe what's happening in the freight market, it's incredibly frustrating when you don't have seasonality, when it kind of disappears. And in this market, nobody knows what's going to happen. And in some ways, that's good because everybody's wrong all the time. Like, because we don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
some will get it right. Like, don't get me wrong, some will get it right. The one thing I do know that is 95% right is our rate cast forecasting tool. That's incredibly accurate, which is, again, another surprise given what we've been through in the pandemic. But we don't know what's coming. We don't know if there'll be a change in the 30% tariff on China, or will it go up, or will it go down? We don't know what's going to happen with free trade between our two countries. So, again, um, my point is that I wonder, is this the new normal? Like, change is constant, right?
Yes.
And I wonder, is that what we are dealing with? Because I've had nothing but change since I started with Freight Waves and then into DAT. It's just been a crazy market where, and I wonder, is this technology, Dan? Like, you think about the amount of technology you have to rate. Like, so, brokers have a lot of rate transparency now because you're kind of the brokers you were the start of this business for DAT. Well, carriers were essentially, but from the rating engine side and the contribution side, it's heavily skewed towards brokers. But on the other side of the ledger, shippers have just as much. So if you
Hmm.
think about how do you expand your margin, right now, all sides of the equation, shippers, carriers, and brokers, all have the same access to the same tools, mostly. and that allows a lot more market transparency. So I wonder, is that why we're seeing such volatility in the market? Is the speed to change is there? Or is it just the macroeconomics and the geopolitical risk and the wars and the pandemics and the trade war? Like, is that are we just this is the new normal, and it just is every man for himself? Like, this is a really strange time, because I had Lee Klaskow on my panel at Symposium. He said, like, and Lee's a really good market analyst. He said we're really unsure. Like, we don't know. Nobody knows. It's a wild time. I don't know that we've ever said that.
I think it's everything. I think, I go back to when we met, right? When we met, so actually we met in 2019, I think, because it was no, 2008, end of 2018, I think, like November 2018, because if I remember correctly, Dan Einwacker from Challenger was saying, guys, we can't take this year and put it in the norm, right? That was when prices, for the first time in my 30 years in the industry, prices skyrocketed to the point where 2018, right, where prices doubled, even tripled. And it was one of these things where we in the logistics industry went, what the hell is going on? And from something, and some people might not agree with me, but from something as simple as ELD, right? And I honestly, my first response, reaction, whatever you want to call it, from what was happening was more along the lines of, okay, this is people taking advantage of a situation and or of a new law, rule, regulation, blah, 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 whatever you want to call it. And the reason I say that is because if you, and I mean, you and I are very aware of this, some people might not be, and it's not that they don't or they're not up to speed, but most large companies, most carriers were on ELD for almost 2 years prior to ELD becoming mandated,
Well,
right?
Dan, go back even further. Go back to 2007. That's when
Yeah.
that's when all the large fleets put their ELDs in. I was at Qualcomm
Hmm.
at the time. I can tell you, ELDs only really hit all the small fleets that were running paper logs. All the large fleets they'd been a decade into this,
Yeah.
and more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even medium and smaller fleets were a good year and a half, 2 years already had ELD. I think what it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you'll know this better than I would, because I really wasn't until I met you. I was hitting just the singular tip of the iceberg when it comes to data. Now I'm like deep dive, I'm underwater, I'm 100 feet down and exploring the entire size of the iceberg. And that's thanks to all the tools that you've shown me in DAT and rate view and IQ and all that. I mean, I'm on it constantly to the point where I've got it on my phone where I can just ask my phone a question. It goes to DAT, pulls the data for me, and I can in real time have conversations with prospects about real information that's coming back. So, yeah, I'll show it. We'll do a whole show on it one day. I'll very soon once I perfect the technology, Dean. But one thing that I realized very quickly when I started to have the conversations with you is it in my brain, it was like the smaller fleets, the 3, 4 trucks that waited till the last minute because of the cost of ELD, right? And so when we look at that, I think it was an opportunity to raise rates that kind of got out of check. And I think because of that, that's why we saw that huge plummet in 2019, right? Because before that, if you think about the industry as a roller coaster, it was almost like a 3 to 5 year span, right? Where 3 to 5 years rates are really good, 3 to 5 years rates kind of dip and not so good. And so, if you want to take it to a different level, it's broker market, carrier, shipper market, right? Like you have these variables. So broker, carrier market, shipper market, broker, carrier market, shipper market. And it was kind of this 3 to 5 year spin. And I remember at that uh, TCA event, that we were speaking, and even most of the panelists. I mean, from very large Canadian companies, right? Which, from an American side, are probably micro companies compared to the macro companies in the size in the U.S. But very large Canadian companies were saying, yeah, like we got kind of a 3-year stint here. And I think it was like 8 months, 9 months, and it just like fell off the face of the earth. So then you fast forward through the pandemic, through all this stuff, and now we have technology. We have things like, um, I personally see things like 3D printers,
Yep.
and the ability to produce products without human involvement. So maybe there's a big upfront capital cost, but then afterwards it becomes pennies on the dollar to produce products.
Then AI agents calling
Hmm.
brokers, carrier AI agents calling you.
Hmm.
Like, I learned about that. Dan, this is nuts. Like, so I think this is the new normal,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
think,
Now, I
yeah,
mean, I know AI agents because I'm huge into the AI world.
I can't wait.
Oh yeah, I'm using AI as an OS. Like my entire operating system is
Right?
built on the nucleus of AI. And there's a couple of things that I see, Dean. And when I was at the TIAA event in San Antonio a couple of weeks ago, there was a company there that actually had
Yep.
AI calling agents, right, to book freight and negotiate freight rates. And I do see the value in it.
Right.
But I also see, if we as individuals don't become very careful about what we use AI about, we're going to eliminate the relationship piece that is mandatory in business. And that to me is a concern. And so like, our team, when our team saw that, and when I'm discussing it, they're like, "Oh, we need that." And I said, "Yeah, but is that, like, to me anyways, and I'm huge in tech, but maybe the old school salesperson, the old school negotiator in me is kind of on the fence, where I say that, to me, if I'm calling you up, Dean, to negotiate a rate, or I have freight in this area, I kind of want to talk to you to say, okay, so what are you doing? How you doing it? Why are you doing it? How long you been there? Is there something we could do? And build that relationship so I can dedicate the business to you. Now, a lot of brokers are not about the dedication. They're about transactional business. So I guess from a transactional standpoint, if you're a broker, or even if you're a carrier out there right now, and your business is 100% transactional and you don't care about relationships, then yes, utilize AI agents. They're cheaper than even overseas agents. They're obviously, you have a one time, say it costs you 5 grand to set up an AI agent, right? That can make phone calls, and the whole process, and the clicking, and the one push button for things to happen. I'm a big believer in it because I believe in velocity. I believe in automating repetitive tasks that don't really move the needle, and I believe the human element should focus on the tasks that really move the needle in business. I don't think there's any business person out there that would negate that. Whereas if I can spend 100% of my time on needle moving activities and automate the rest, why would I not do it? Right. But I think um, we need to be very careful as to which pieces of the puzzle we automate, which pieces of the puzzle we give to AI, because I think we're going to be losing a real deep impact on how we negotiate,
Well,
how
Dan,
we create relationships.
what about all of the young people that use, working on the broker floor as a sort of an entry point into the logistics industry? Because they're already seeing their job under threat.
Hmm.
Like, this is one of those questions. It's bit like autonomous vehicles. Um, still coming around the question of why. Like, why do we need this technology? AI agents are very interesting because you can see it at scale force you into the exceptions where where there is a something unusual that you've got to deal with. But I really agree with your point because this is about relationships, and but I guess if you go back to where we started the conversation, here we are on 5 years into DAT, and we've had nothing but change.
Yeah.
Well, there's no precedent for AI, generative AI, and AI agents, carrier, trucker, AI agents calling brokers en masse. but there's no precedent for that in history. So
Hmm.
you think, well, so what's next? Like, so I guess where I landed with this literally last night when I landed in Boston was this is the new normal. Like, with change is constant. We are very tech driven. The rate of change is unsurpassed anything we've seen in our history.
Hmm.
Uh, I've been in the trucking industry or in the workforce 48 years, which kind of ages myself. But in 48 years, Dan, I have seen so much change in the last 20 years, but in the
Hmm.
last five, like because of the pandemic, it drove the adoption of a lot of new tech.
Yep.
And I look at the shipper side of our business, which has got so much rate transparency now. Their buying ability is they're so much more savvy when it comes to procurement
Yes.
in the market. And on
Hmm.
your side, you've got a lot more tech now to try and really zero in. You're quoting with the precision of a long range rifle as opposed to a shotgun. You know,
Yes.
so you're getting much more precise about where you want to land. At some point, that kind of narrows down your margin expansion opportunities on the high and the low side, right? Because everybody's got the same tools.
It does. And I think this is where, I mean, if you remember a couple of years ago, um, I started to really swing in the position of cost plus. And I think it's the future. I mean, it's interesting that you bring this up because I was just watching an interview of like a 45-minute interview with Sam Altman from ChatGPT, right? And here's what he said. He said 2025 is the year of the agents doing a lot of work, including coding. Coding, they think from this, yeah, so from the CEO of ChatGPT, he says coding is the industry that's going to be impacted the most over the next year and a half, 2 years with AI. And the panel asked a follow-up question. They said, well, how much of ChatGPT is being coded by AI? And he says, a lot. And he said, yeah, our core fundamentals are being all coded out by AI. So very interesting to hear that from, the leader of OpenAI. He said 2026 is AI is going to be discovering new stuff and making some serious scientific breakthroughs. He says, I believe 2026 is the year where AI will start to capitalize and start to have major breakthroughs in like scientific and health and all that kind of stuff. 2027, he figures it's moving into the personal world, meaning robots in every home. Yeah, and he's figuring it's that close, and he's saying, here's the thing: is we s- when we look at this AI, right? So and obviously, I'm doing a deep dive into this because I want to keep Pinnacle on the forefront of tech because having conversations with customers, some of the tools I've developed and some of the processes I've developed, when we bring it up to customers, they go, "Yeah, I'm in. I want that," and you can see them biting at the bit to get it. And I'm trying to eliminate friction on every level when it comes like how do we make it so easy that the customers like it'd be crazy for them not to work with us kind of thing, right? And so when I you start researching this, Dean, there was one conversation that I was watching, and I can send you the link to it, and it was so interesting. So it was the ex CEO of Google, and he said, yeah, and he said, here's the thing. He said, in the AI race, he said, you know, the last race that we saw was the race to the moon of this caliber when it comes to countries. And he says, but here's the thing. If you look at a scale, the way AI is moving, he said, like, it's going from a learning like this to almost a vertical learning. And what he said is one day equals a month. So if one country gets ahead of another country by a day, within 2 hours, they're a month ahead. And this is the scale that we have coming down the pipe in a very short period of time. Like, and here's the thing, right? We hear this, and a lot of people start, my job's in jeopardy. This is in jeopardy. Yes, there is a lot of careers that people have hung their hats on that are in jeopardy. There is. Uh, And that's it, right? And if you look at, the Industrial Revolution, right? And the biggest one that most people refer this to is the transition from horse and carriage to cars. When Ford really started pumping out production. And you look at all of these companies and all of these businesses that like changed hoofs, and come feed your horses for X amount. And now it's like the feeding of horses moved to gas stations. The hoofs moved to wheels. So
Right.
there's all these shifts in our world, right? And I think this
Was that a book?
age,
Did you say that was a book?
which what do you mean?
You were quoting all of that. Was that a book or a
No, no,
podcast?
no. It's some videos I've been watching.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's yeah, yeah. So it's like I'll send you the links because they're so interesting, Dean.
That's fascinating stuff. I'd love that
Yeah,
analogy though of going back over 100 years, because I can remember watching uh, People That Made America
yeah,
series about how uh, gasoline was a byproduct of making kerosene. Used to let it run off into the right until they got the combustion engine. Like so. Yeah, anyway, sorry to interrupt.
no, 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 no. But I mean, that's reality, right? So something that used to be a runoff, used to be disposable, is now consumable,
Right, right,
right?
right, right, right.
And you look at horse feeding stations and little towns that people would stop in became booming metropolises because people can get there so much quicker in vehicles, right? So you go back to autonomous vehicles. I think autonomous vehicles will be here sooner than later, but with autonomous vehicles, I think it's an all or nothing deal because wait, yes. So it's all about infrastructure. It's all about everything being autonomous because when you take a 0 and 1, which is a computer, any algorithm, any AI, anything that's digital is all zeros and ones. And it's how they map together that creates these thinking components. But when you really look at the heart of it, it's not thinking like you and I think, it's thinking based on training, right? So the biggest thing when it comes to this process in everything we're doing is if you had one human into the mix that decides to say, well, it's my turn to go, not your turn, everything stops around it, right? So from an autonomous vehicle perspective, that's why the human has to be behind the wheel, because if somebody pulls out in front of them and you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it can stop, but when you have like, I guess the best way, I remember Elon Musk talking about it, where he said, like, here's the thing: you pull up to a stoplight, and if this car or a stop sign, if this car is like 4 milliseconds ahead of this car knows it's first, and this car understands that, so it's going to stop.
True.
Whereas if this car starts
Right.
going and then a human decides, no, I was there first, and he's in a bad mood or he's in a rush and just pulls, then it's like everything stops and then everything has to reset and then go again.
Everything. It's
So
all or nothing. You're exactly right, because
I think so.
we got wrecked, almost wrecked last night by someone changing from the wrong lane and cut across in front of our lift vehicle. Unpredictable. And you would have thought there's no way someone will do that. But you're right. If all the vehicles were talking to each other on a smart road, right, that knew where everyone was, then yeah,
Mhm.
it's a great point.
Now,
Because I think that's why I don't think, my personal opinion is that autonomous vehicles on the truck side are decades away, because trucks are constantly surrounded by unpredictable human road users, right? It's far easier to have automation in the skies, right?
yes.
Because it's a far more predictable environment, and they still don't have pilotless planes, right?
Hmm.
Because think about Miracle on the Hudson, right? You think about exceptions. I guarantee you, if you put AVs out there on the middle mile piece on the highway, there is going to be stuff happen that's unpredictable, they've never seen before. Because, Dan, I get out there in my truck and drive, and I see some stuff and think, holy crap, I've done 2 million miles. I've never seen anything like that. And this gets to, this is the new normal, right? So we're in this period of constant change because everything's changing exponentially. Bill Gates said it at their 50th anniversary of Microsoft. He said, we've seen a lot of change in 50 years, but in the next decade, we're about to see more change in the next
Yeah.
decade than we have in the last
Yeah.
50.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be more of an eye opener than the Industrial Revolution was. And you bring it back to, just for 1 second, because I know we got to get on road check week, but you bring it back to autonomous vehicles. And what I see is if autonomous vehicles were on the road today, right, the humans would have more accidents than they're having now. And the reason I say that is because we tend to go into our subconscious and we tend to go into a zone, right? You ever left work and got home and went, how the hell did I just get here? Like just you're in this zone. You don't even, I mean, let me rephrase it because you've been a driver for a long time. How many times have you picked up a load and all of a sudden you're at delivery and it's like the last 10 hours were just a blink of an
Yeah.
eye kind of feeling?
Overnight express in Australia all the time. It's called automatic behavior syndrome. ABS is what it's called from a physiological perspective. It's where
Yep.
the brain goes to sleep, but the eyes stay open. Like
Yes.
you can see it on MRI imagery, and you can keep the vehicle within an inch of the fog line, but you're
Hmm.
not processing anything else.
Hmm. Now, think about dropping a truck, a car that's autonomous, that has cameras all around it, that is programmed with specific margins to do things. And what I mean by that is somebody pulls in front, it breaks. It's the human that is that person stopping, smash before their brain kicks in. So this is where I think the problem is going to be until everything's autonomous. Then it's going to be and Dean, I like driving, but the productive side of me
Yeah,
says if I can have somebody drive me around and I can just get
yeah,
things done while I'm
yeah.
driving, I'd be much happier.
Man, if I could have the truck drive me and I could go to bed, I'm in the bunk in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no joke, because
Mhm.
that's a far lesser risk to let the truck drive itself than me trying to drive tired out of my brain.
Yeah. Or think about it, Dean. You can write your blog post while the truck's driving you to a location.
Yeah,
So, we go back to this AI calling. So here's where I see a lot of this really working is an owner operator, right? Like Rico,
yep,
right? Our friend Rico,
yep,
owner operator. Rico Muhammad gets in the truck. He starts leaving, he starts driving. He clicks a button with a destination where he's going, and that AI agent then searches DAT's load board, load links load board, whatever ITS is. It searches all these load boards. It finds a load from origin to destination because Rico says, even picks up his phone and says, okay, I'm going here, but I want to go somewhere around here. So
right,
as he's driving, this thing searches, then starts calling the brokers to
yeah,
negotiate rates for him. That's a great use because then when Rico hits or when the load's booked, Rico can then call them and say, "Hey, my agent just called you. I just wanted to introduce myself." And this is the piece that I
right,
think needs to
right,
happen. There needs to be that call.
right,
It's kind of like when everybody switched to email.
right,
Right? Email was the big thing to sell people on and da-da. But what I found really worked was an email and then a phone call
right,
or a phone call, then an email. And
right,
even to the point where I remember messaging people on LinkedIn because I'm doing a lot of like um, lead generation on
yeah,
LinkedIn. And when the whole AI thing came out 3 years ago or whatever, when it really started hitting, when everybody was using ChatGPT to write emails because everybody decided to become non-creatives,
right,
um, I would capitalize one letter in the person's name
right,
when I would send an email. Or like a LinkedIn message because there was like things like duck soup where you just load a list and it will email that entire list while
right,
you're on to other things. Now, from a velocity perspective, great idea.
right,
From a relationship building
right,
perspective, you're
yep,
lazy as hell.
yeah,
So, right? And call a spade a spade. So what I would do is I would send personal messages, but I'd say, hey, just so you know this isn't AI, I capitalize the R or the
right,
the A in Dean, or and
clever.
I had a lot of people come back and go, man, thank you. You know what I
Thank you.
mean? Because
I couldn't
everybody
tell.
is getting well,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was this like it was this tsunami
right,
of bullshit emails, and you can still tell, and the challenge is people are still just copying and pasting. They're
right,
not even seasoning ChatGPT or any AI like a Thanksgiving turkey. They're just
right,
using it out of the box and saying, oh my god, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Why? Because it takes away any need for you to use
right,
brain function and be creative. Like,
right, right,
so there's uses for it which are great,
yep,
right? Like I've got things where I just talk into my phone and it'll schedule appointments for me, email you and everything. Because to
yep,
me, typing your email address and do is a waste of time. I
Right.
can do it with my voice. I barely write any emails. And when I say that, it's not I'm using ChatGPT. I hit a button and I talk,
Right.
and the email, I've trained my whisper, my voice whisper on my style of speaking and writing. So I go blah 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 blah, blah to send the email. I can't type that fast. So
Right.
I use my voice to
Right.
accelerate my workflow.
Right.
Pretty simple stuff.
Dan,
How
this
does this work
yeah.
in the logistics business environment? That's
Yeah.
the big question.
Well, so who's Rico's AI agent calling? Another
So
agent?
no, they would. Well, I mean, right now the AI agents would call brokerage companies to negotiate rates.
But what are you going to do on your end at Pinnacle where you get like 1,000 calls from truck drivers, AI agents?
See, this is the flip side of that,
Right.
right? So it's like for me, and I can only speak for myself, right?
Right.
My process, I don't want anything posted.
Okay.
I don't want to. I want to do queries.
Right. 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 Right.
And then I want to take those queries and I'll look at them and I'll put their MC into a database or into a
Right.
function where I find out, are they credible?
Right.
Are they good companies?
Right.
Like we have Carrier 4-in-1, there's things like Trucker Tools, like I mean, there's all these tools out there to say, okay, what are the violations? Like,
Right.
is everything in order? I mean, you wouldn't believe how many carriers every week that we speak to where I punch in their MC, and it's like things are red all over the place, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Oh yeah, I had some horrible drivers, and they did this and this. Okay, so but these are the pieces of the conversation
Right.
that I don't think AI is at that point. Like,
Wow.
don't get me wrong,
Right.
amazing that you can have a synthetic voice
Yep.
create podcasts. And if you look at like Google at Notebook LM by Google, right?
Right.
You can do a research paper, click one button, and it'll generate a podcast between two people. And they sound human.
Oh, did you
Like,
see this thing this week where they're doing it in multi languages? It takes your English
yes.
voice and translates it into Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And but I mean, 11 Labs have had that for ages.
Have they?
For about a year and a half now, 2
Oh,
years. Like
ages.
yeah,
To
yeah,
our point.
ages. Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it goes to our point that we just talked about.
Right.
This is like it seems like it was so long ago
Right.
before AI was even a thing. And did you know 2016 is when OpenAI was created?
I didn't.
Yeah. So Sam Altman and a team of 18 people started OpenAI in 2016. And it only until 2022, I think it was, that he said, where it actually, like, they were on their O3 model
Yeah.
by the time things started hitting. But it's interesting because when you hear about OpenAI, it's like, within 6 weeks they had 3 million users.
Right. Right.
No, it was like 6 years they had 3 million users because
Right.
it was 2016 and then 2022. That's a 6 year time span. But we only hear about it because it's like, oh my gosh, in no time. And that's when
Right.
the model got to a point where it was
Right.
trained on so much data, it was able to write emails for you. It
Ah,
was able
okay.
to do, and then, based on APIs and all these other really cool functions, it could do certain things and trigger
Right.
certain things and all that. Now, when you listen to what Sam Altman was talking about in this interview, he says like people are using it as their OS. So it's like ChatGPT is literally, college students' operating system. He says,
Right.
literally, we're seeing evidence that nobody, like 20-year-olds, are not making decisions until they ask ChatGPT,
Oh,
which,
well, that
which
can't be good.
I don't see it now. Contrast that, Dean. Okay, I've taken my favorite books
Yep.
on personal development, mindset, strategy,
Right.
subconscious mind, conscious mind, books that I know, like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Napoleon
Yeah.
Hill's 12 Golden Rules,
Yeah.
Motivation Manifesto, Brendan Burchard, High Performance Habit, Brendan Burchard. And I put them into a GPT
Yep.
and I talk to that GPT all the time. I do,
Oh,
because it has 150 years of people's studying human
yep.
performance and psychology, and I can ask it a question and ask it to go deeper and ask it to go deeper and ask it to deeper. Like,
Just go back. How did you put the books in? How do you do that bit?
because I just got them on PDF and I uploaded them.
Oh,
So
I'm so far
I'm,
behind.
yeah, I love reading, right?
Huh.
But if for those that love reading, there's always a piece of a book. I'm like, I don't quite get that.
So you can
What do you mean
upload
by
it.
that?
Yeah, and ask questions.
So
Like,
what I did, like back in 2009, I started Little Conversations Today. And the reason I started is because the fallout of the economy, when I lost my business and everything was like a total chaos in my brain, I said, like, how do I get back on track? So what I
mm,
started doing is I started really diving into reading. And
mm,
then what I would do is I'd contact the author and I'd say, can I interview you about your book? And
mm.
I would read the book and I would ask them every question in the book that I didn't quite get.
Right.
Like, okay, you said this philosophy, but what do you mean? Like, would I apply it in my real life? Because I figured if I had those questions, other people reading the book would have those questions as well.
Yeah.
So what I've been able to do now is I'm able to understand what I'm reading better by just almost every book I've read. I have a GPT on that book. So I've just
Right.
uploaded the book,
Yep.
whether I bought it or found it on the internet.
Right.
I've uploaded it and I ask it questions. And
Wow.
then I interact with a digital form of the book that provides me answers. And
And you
this
can ask.
is
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing, but it's
Yeah.
also a very bad thing
Right.
because you have to be very conscious about pulling people out of the mix because as humans, we're wired to talk to people.
Yeah.
But very soon, you're going to see people, Dean, if you think social media had people have issues 6 years from now, just wait. People are gonna. I mean, I'm telling you right now, and I know this has nothing to do with logistics, and you're probably all sitting here going, we've been on for 45 minutes, and we still haven't even talked about Road Check Week. But it's the reality is, Dean, that I think from a psychological perspective, in 5-6 years, when people are talking to their robots more than they're actually talking to humans,
Wow.
we're gonna have real issues in the world.
God, this
I
is
believe it wholeheartedly, man. It's going to be like
this is scary. Like until we
it
get
is.
to Jetson's level teleporting matter, and freight, like literally teleporting loads, we've still got a business. But
Yeah,
the way it gets handled. So I think this is where we started the conversation. Is this is the new normal, but the rate of change is exponential.
yeah,
The way you thought things used to happen, I don't think that's normal anymore. Because I think there's a whole generation of us that grew up with expecting things to happen in a certain way over time. That the pandemic probably was the catalyst, but it was changing a long time before that. I
yes,
think when I go back and look at the rate of change, technology has just accelerated the change because we saw the adoption of technology change dramatically. The time to market shorten during the pandemic. But what you're
yeah,
saying is that the time to market of new ideas now is even faster.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, you can go from idea to business in 35 minutes with AI.
yeah, yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
mean, to the point right now where, like, if you look at like a Gen Spark, right? So Gen Spark has something called a super agent. You can go in and with a series of very well crafted prompts, and
right,
this is the difference, right? We
right.
need to understand how to communicate with these machines
Mm,
to get the responses. But you can go in and with a series of very well crafted prompts, you can have your entire website built,
mm,
all your marketing campaigns, imagery that
right,
is human like, as if you
right.
took a model, put your t shirt on it, and took pictures, and all of it within 30 minutes.
Wow.
Whereas before it was
Yeah,
okay, we got to get a photo shoot, we got to send the product off to this company to do t-shirts, and we got to do it. And now it's just you can sit down with literally this an iPad
yeah.
and
Dan,
you can create an entire business and launch it in an hour.
in 1997, I did a program for the Australian Trucking Association called Truck Plus, where I had 32 trucking companies that I took through a business planning process and spent weeks writing business plans for each of these trucking companies. I'm guessing what took me 3 months would probably take me probably an hour to do.
Yeah, if that. If you knew how to prompt it, Dean, it would
Yeah,
probably take you 10 minutes.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
but I
probably do it a
mean,
lot better.
and it would do it a lot better. It would
Yeah,
structure it like
yeah.
you can say act as if you're like a,
So
expert in writing business documents,
right,
whatever the case may be,
yeah,
and you can write it in no time. Now,
right.
you think of the velocity of that,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
somebody using it to companies. And this
yeah,
is where I think the big thing we're going to find. The bigger companies are slower to adopt.
sure.
One of the questions that was asked to Sam Altman, he says, why do startups like beat the shit out of larger companies?
Right,
And he said, it's easy because you're not afraid to try everything.
right,
And he says, whereas big companies, unfortunately, the heads of big companies still have dinosaurs at the helm. And I'm not talking about the age of people, I'm talking about the mentality.
mentality.
This
Yeah,
is the way it needs to go,
right, right,
right? You look at like the Jack Welches of the world, right?
right,
Like everything he did was manual and
right,
it was people.
right.
Now, where do you put AI into the mix? Where do you put
Yeah,
technology into the mix
yeah,
to pull people out,
yeah.
but still not jeopardize the overall results structure functionality? I mean, this
Yeah.
is the big question. I think these are the
Can you
questions that
imagine
we're asking.
being a young person entering the workforce now? Dan, like, I got a 25 and 26-year-old, like, they're probably like, I just, how worrying is this, like, to them? Like, are they looking at this world and thinking this is normal? Like, or this is,
Well,
because you're seeing whole careers change. We're in this
yeah.
period where what people thought were careers that they went through college to study
Hmm.
disappearing. Other careers are just changing before their
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
Case in point, the brokerage floor is
Yeah.
changing before our eyes. And I had one of our largest brokers the other day say, like, they're really worried about the impact on their young people, their teams, people in their 20s that are coming into this industry trying to make a start. Like, this is real stuff.
Hmm.
I'm sort of a my wife calls me sort of a, like a bit of a softie when it comes to this, but I have a lot of empathy for other people. Like, I just, I feel for other people, what they're going through. And I wonder about where this takes us. Like, where does this lead us? Like, what do all these people do? How are they gainfully employed? What do they do? Is the gig economy the new normal where people are doing multiple
It
jobs,
is.
struggling to get
It
by?
is. Yeah.
Because,
I think it's going to be, um, the, but Dean, it's like everything, right? If you look at how housing was built during COVID and after,
right,
homes will never be built the same. And some people say, Dan, what are you talking about? Homes, if you look at MLS and all these different networks, right?
right.
One of the big selling features is home office. Like I have three friends right now building homes,
Hmm,
and it's like the office is going here.
right,
Whereas 10 years ago, there was never talk about an office in a home. It was the dining room. Do you know what I mean? Now it's like, no, a home office. And, you look at MLSs and you look at the structure of the writing,
right,
and a lot of it is, oh, we start your business from home with this beautiful home office and this serene view. And did it like, it's first thing I said when all of this happened. I said, there's going to be two fundamental shifts from COVID. One, companies are going to realize that mobile work is actually more productive. The
right.
companies that aren't dinosaurs are going to realize that. The companies that aren't worried and, have major fears of losing
Hmm,
people are going to now negotiate working from home as a bonus as opposed to more money.
right,
There's major studies out there that working from home creates more work life happiness,
right,
not necessarily balance, because I think we
right,
work more when we work from home, but
right.
it's happiness because
Yeah,
you're not having to travel.
right,
Then the second piece of that is the technology. Now
right,
we need the technology.
right,
What you and I are doing 10
right,
years ago,
right.
it was very difficult. During COVID, this exponentially
Yep.
blew up.
So, Dan,
Now what's happening, Dean, is
yep.
the big thing now is, can we meet in person? Whereas before it was is and this is the crazy thing is
Right.
it's like it, it's this reverse. It's like bell bottoms coming back.
Is it the case of the more things change, the more they stay the same? Like, is
Yeah, it
that
could
the full
be.
circle of
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that could be a full
And
cycle turn.
I don't know if you could see this, but this is a thing I saw about people meeting at the beach,
Beach.
and they've got
Yeah.
the backdrops. They're carrying the backdrops behind them on their backs, walking along.
Oh, See,
But it's been,
I saw one of those where a guy was driving his bike. He was bicycling and he had the picture of his office behind him. He's like, "No, man, I'm at home. I'm just kind of chilling." And then he got
well, I've
into an
got,
accident and the backdrop's gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's my 8-inch exhaust pipe off my truck,
yeah. There
and
you
he's
go.
Route 66. So,
Yeah. You see? So it's
oh,
it's like this is what it is. I mean, right now with backgrounds, I can change my background and be anywhere I want. Like it's just it's cool, it's scary, but yet it's what it is. Right?
yeah,
Like if you look at the beginning of COVID, how many people were like, "How does this thing work?" And where's my volume and that, and they're trying. Now it's like just normal. You get
yeah.
on, you're like, "Okay, Dean, you got an echo. Okay, good. Echo's gone. Let's
But
go."
we're more connected. I feel like we're more connected because we're more remote. I feel like I get a lot more done remote. I've been remote
Yeah.
working for 25 years of being in this country, but I've always worked remote because I can get stuff done. I don't need supervision. Not everybody's like that,
No.
but I feel like we're more connected and we get more done. And I feel like we're smarter. Like, but I think we lose the personal piece right now because now there's a deliberate attempt to avoid the conversation with human interaction, right? Because we're texting. Like
Yeah.
remember we used to call, pick up people and call. Like that's going away. People are
Yeah.
texting, and
Yeah.
now
And
you've got
people are actually texting saying, "Do you have a second?"
yeah,
Because now, and this is the crazy part is when I was a kid, it was like you pick up the phone, you call your buddy, like, "Hey, you want to go out?" Now it's like if you pick up the phone and call, people are like, "Why are you calling me?"
yeah.
Like,
What's
and
yeah,
it's like, what do you mean? It's like now I find myself texting people, going, "Do you have a minute?" Because it's more polite than just calling them out of the blue.
I
And
know,
I have people say, "Dan, you don't need to text me. If I'm busy, I just won't answer." And in
right?
my head, I go, "Yeah, but I have to dial your number, wait for it to ring, where I can just go, 'Do you have a minute?' and then move on to something else." You text me back, you're like, "Yeah." Then I pick up the phone and call.
But
So to
don't you use
me, it's a waste of time to call you if you're not going to answer the phone, right?
exactly? But don't you use voice activation to say call Dean like in the text?
Yeah, so when I text you saying, "Do you have a moment?" and you go, "Yes," I
Yeah.
just say, ASIRI, call Dean, right? Like, and this is the thing, right? So it's, but it's
Uh,
crazy, Dean, because
you know,
normally I would have just picked it up and gone.
I've got a great name for the truck or AI agent. We're going to call him Rico. Rico, the AI agent.